Today is May 25th, 2023. My name's Melissa Ackerman, and I will be interviewing Andrea Statman. Good morning, Andrea. How are you?
I'm great, Melissa. How are you?
I'm good. We're going to start this by, I'd like to hear where you grew up, just a little bit about your childhood and how you made it to Dallas, if you didn't grow up here.
Okay. Well, I actually started in Dallas because I was born here. And when I was, I think, around 3.5 years old, my parents and me moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. So I always have thought of Little Rock as my home because that's where I grew up. But Dallas is my second home because my mother came from a large, family here in Dallas. And when my dad said to my mother, we're going to be moving to Little Rock, and she said, where is that? And so she kind of cut a deal that we would spend as much time as possible in Dallas. So I spent summers here. I have cousins my age, and really it kind of always felt like Dallas was a second home. Went to the University of Oklahoma. And when I graduated, I actually got hired for a job on campus at OU. Went to Houston, went to work for Foley's on their executive training program. And so retail was kind of my thing because I had worked some retail jobs, growing up. But I just hated living in Houston. So after a year, I came up and I interviewed at Sanger Harris, and they were part of Federated Department Stores, so I just made the transition. My parents were in Europe, and I came back, and when they came back, they said, well, what did I miss? I said, well, I came up to Dallas, interviewed for a job, and I'm moving. So that's how I got back to Dallas.
Was your family, when you were in Dallas, involved in the community in any way?
In Little Rock?
Oh, any of the places where you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of why I got involved in the Federation when I really moved back to Dallas, is that Little Rock is a small Jewish community, very tight-knit, community, and they didn't have a federation, but they had what was called a Jewish Welfare Board. And really, even today, they have the federation is for the state of Arkansas. It's not in Little Rock. But my dad particularly was, always involved with that. I can remember many nights at the dinner table, he'd get a phone call, and it would be someone saying some Jewish person moved to Dallas. They either needed help, needed a job, or just needed something. So Daddy would get on the phone, and he, had like a few of his buddies, and by the time the night was over, they'd found this person some help and either, a temporary job someplace. So kind of reaching out and helping Jews in need was kind of part of my DNA. My dad was an officer at Temple B'nai Israel in Little Rock. My mother was involved in the sisterhood, and in Brandeis, she was chair. I think she started the Brandeis chapter there. But anyway, so all of that was just kind of what I thought you were supposed to do. And I love that feeling of knowing so many people that you had something in common with, and that common bond. So when I moved to Dallas, I didn't get so involved right away because I got kind of immersed in my job. But right after I got married, which was in 1974, the first thing I did, because I had been working and I kind of stopped working for a while, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with myself? So I called the Federation, and by luck, I got referred to Harriet Hoffman, who ended up being a very dear friend. I don't even know what her title was back in the day, but one of her responsibilities was Younger Set. So I got right at the very beginning involved in Younger Set.
And what was Younger Set?
Younger Set was for, at the time, if you were married, it was primarily just women, and if you were 36 years of age and younger. And it was for community service projects to kind of illustrate what the Federation did for the community, and really kind of gave you a way to give back in a hands-on way. So I was kind of hooked from the beginning, and at that time we were doing a lot of the Helping Hands program is what it was called. A lot of resettlement of the Vietnamese that have settled here. So we would go and we would furnish an apartment. We'd buy bags of rice, all kinds of vegetables, set them up. And when these Vietnamese families came to Dallas, they had a place to start out.
That's wonderful. And then, what did you do after Younger Set?
Well, if there is such a thing as climbing the ladder at the Federation, I think I started at Younger Set. I ended up being campaign chair and chair of Younger Set. Then Zion Balaban, who was the associate executive director, and probably one of the most, she was a mentor. And was really the heart and soul, if not of the Federation of the Jewish community. I mean, she got us all going in the right direction for the right reason. So she said to me, if you really want to get more involved, you got to get involved in women's division. And so by then, I guess I must have been old enough, and reluctantly moved into women's division. And one of the things I guess I'm most proud of is I'm kind of skipping around there. I chaired women's division, and then I got involved in campaign big picture for the Federation, and then after that I was ended up on the board, executive committee, and ended up president of the Federation.
What years were you president?
1992 and 93.
Okay. And what was the Federation's official name during your tenure?
Jewish Federation of Greater Dallas.
And was your title president or chairman of the board? Or?
It was president.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who were some of the leaders when you were
Well, I was
president?
very lucky. Tex Fagadow was the president right before me, and really was extremely helpful to me. Harold Kleiman was involved, Larry Schoenbrunn, Fanny Shannon, of course, of blessed memory. I mean, it was just an honor to know her. And kind of at the tail end of, the Jake Feldman, I mean, he wasn't so involved, but certainly his presence was still felt. I know Everett Rosenberg was one of the really early, presidents that I think probably the first time I served on the board, he was president. Irvin Jaffe, he was quite a solicitor. Leon Rabin. I mean, I'll never forget his saying, because I also chaired the planning, and it was then the planning and allocations committee, but ended up, I think my second year we dropped the planning part of it. But Leon would come in and to the budget, the budget meetings, the planning, the budget committee, and he'd bring a baseball cap in, and he'd put it on, and he said, "We're all in this room on the same team now. Whatever else you're interested in, put it in your pocket." And so I've never forgotten that, because there's some roles at the Federation, or most roles, no matter what your interest is, you have to look at things from a community perspective and how you can bring everyone together.
How large was the board during your tenure?
It was huge, because you had, your normal sized board of probably about 20, I don't even know if normal is the right word, but there were about 25 people that were elected. But so many people served by appointment. You had, your various committee chairs, and then you had rabbis from all of the various congregations sitting on your board, which was kind of interesting in and of itself. So it was a very large board.
What was the relationship between the Federation and the synagogues and temples at that time?
I think the relationship was good on the surface, but we didn't fund them. That was not part of the budgeting process. So that, I think, is one of the positive things today, is that we can really help the synagogues and fund some of their programs. But we didn't do that. We just our agencies locally and over and overseas were the ones that we funded.
And day schools?
Day schools were eligible for funding.
Mm-hmm. But not the congregations?
No.
Mm-hmm. And were there coalitions with organizations or government outside of the Jewish community that you were involved in?
Not so much. I mean, the agencies then did come to get, what we called, our partner agencies today, the JCC, JFS, the Federation. They really did work together pretty well. They at least had regular meetings. There was still, the turf war. That existed then and probably under the surface does still today, because there's that competition for the fundraising dollar. Golden Acres was a big part of that partnership.
Were the agencies fundraising on their own at that time, the constituent agencies?
Not so much. That notion was kind of introduced that you'd have to start thinking about raising money on your own, because no matter how much money we raise, there's never enough to meet your needs.
Mm-hmm. What significant local, national, or international events had an effect on your era?
Well, I think the whole Oslo Accords came underneath, when I was president of the Federation, and that partnership with Israel was pretty strong. We had a robust mission program. We did a community mission to Israel. We did a men's mission to New York. We had multiple issues, but the relationship with Israel was really very, very strong in terms of those donors who still prioritized that over local giving. And so, that was a very strong partnership. The United Jewish Appeal was still, separate from the Council of Jewish Federations. So they had a big, role in terms of really, they brought down some of the best training for our solicitors. And we, that UJA campaign was still really pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. And who were the prominent supporters of Israel at that point?
Well, you had, the Jake Feldman, mm-hmm. the Shannons, Murray Mumvis. Those were really the three big driving forces, mm-hmm. I think.
Mm-hmm. Was the teen tour still going on at that point?
I don't think.
I threw in that question. I just came in.
Yeah. I don't recall that.
Okay. Didn't mean to.
No.
I just was curious.
Yeah.
What changes did you experience in the Dallas Jewish community?
Well, I think there was a lot of changes, just period. I mean, that's when Clinton came in. Can't stop thinking about tomorrow. He was young. I was actually the youngest. I think maybe still am. I was 44 years old when I became president of the Federation, and so there was that. We had an executive director. We hadn't gone to the CEO model yet. We had a new executive director who was young, Avram Cohen. Mm-hmm. He was like the rock star in the JCC movement, and he was in Chicago. And we went outside of the field, so to speak, stayed, in Jewish communal life, but outside of the field, and brought Avram in. So he had a kind of fresh eyes, different way of looking at community and federation. But because he came out of the JCC movement, that was kind of a natural gravitation for us to work closely with the J. And it was a different time. I mean, even in terms of the women's campaign being a little more independent of the overall campaign. And we started a program called Choices, which Susan Levy of blessed memory was the chair of that. And we brought in a Olympia Dukakis. We had 900 women there. And that was the first big presence of a women's event in Dallas, and it was, I mean, there was just a lot of kind of maybe big but subtle yet at the same time changes, and
Were there more women involved in general in the overall campaign and in the leadership?
yes. Yes, they kind of broke out of the mold of women in women's division, and even I think in some of the professional divisions like the attorneys, you started to see some women leave women's. They kind of stayed in both places, but identified more in career kinds of categories. So it was it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The economy was terrible. In '92 when I first came in, we were on the tail end of a recession, and campaign. I think of that year we raised about I think it was around $6.6 million, which wasn't bad, but there wasn't a lot of growth mode there. We did well to really hang on.
Mm-hmm. Who was the president before you and president after you?
Tex Faggodower was before me,
Yes,
and Stan Rabin was after
I
me.
interviewed him the other day.
Yeah, so I mean, I was like bookended between two fabulous leaders, and really, I was the president of the federation, but these two guys were my mentors.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a wonderful experience.
Mm-hmm. So, did you feel like Dallas was a cohesive community, or divisive?
Interesting question. I think a little bit of both. I think that we were united in that we all felt like the Federation was the central address in terms of raising money, because we really weren't tasked with raising our own, and I think that brought us together maybe a little bit more. And really there was still some of that planning piece. So together in that regard, but kind of divided in that everyone, was kind of out there promoting their own thing.
Mm-hmm. In relation to your time at Federation, of what are you most proud?
I think I'm most proud of some of the leadership that I kind of brought along with me. I think that piece that I talked about a minute ago about more women being involved, about kind of a fresh look in some instances of maybe a little different way of doing business, and kind of moving along into the next century, so to speak. I don't know. I think I loved it all. I loved being that intimately involved with the Federation. I've always believed that we're better together than we are divided, and even though after my Federation career, so to speak, I went to work for an agency, I still maintain that all the agencies have their strengths, but for a vibrant community, we all need to be together.
Do you feel like your time involved in Federation has helped you in your job and in your roles at Legacy and everything else?
Definitely understand, where the piece that we do at the Legacy fits into the whole, but just the relationships and the people that I met and that just have served me well in what I do for the Legacy, which is the Director of Development. But just watching how some of what I call the rock stars of solicitation, and how you cultivate donors and all of that. I got a lot of that basically from Ziona. She was the best of the best.
Mm-hmm. Are there any special experiences or stories during your tenure you'd like to share?
I think one of the interesting things I did is that we entertained the Israeli ambassador to the United States in Dallas, and I got to spend a whole day with he and his wife.
Who was that at the time?
Chauvel.
Okay.
And just with that, don't forget I was kind of young, but just with that Secret Service, presence, and just hosting them throughout the day and showing them how we did things here in Dallas that was an experience I'll never forget. And my mission to Israel, and it was, really special kind of seeing it through the eyes of, how the different communities come together to make so much of what happens there.
How large a mission was that?
There were, I think, close to 150 people. So by today's standards, that's not huge, but it was a good-sized mission then.
Did it bring a lot of people that had never been?
Yes,
Okay.
as well as some, tried and true leadership.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Do you want to talk anything about your family? You're married. You have a grown child.
I do. I have an adult daughter, Allison. She lives in Dallas, and Ben, Ben Statman, who was one of these people that was born in Dallas, raised in Dallas, had his whole career in Dallas, and never lived anyplace else.
And how did you two meet?
Interesting. My aunt, Arlene Leaves, is my aunt, and she used to work markets for Ben's father, who was an apparel manufacturer, small company. Ben grew up in that business, and so when I moved when I moved back to Dallas, my aunt told Ben, "You have to meet my niece." And being the nice guy that he was, he said, "Okay, Arlene, I'll call her," and he did. And so we started dating, and that's how it was. And Ben was it was a second generation apparel, was an apparel manufacturer in Dallas when that industry was the third leading industry in the state of Texas. So it's not that anymore, but it had quite a history in its glory days, and Ben was a big part of that.
That's wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
No, I just applaud I think the long-term relationships that I think most of our presidents have with the Federation, which is just, I think, a testament to the leadership that has come after me and after them, and it's just like they say, from generation to generation. But that group of people have kind of hung in, and in various different ways have been there for the community, and I'm proud of being a part of that. And Dallas is a great place to live, and it's a good Jewish community, and it's a growing one, because Dallas is a vibrant city, and so we get an influx of Jewish people from other parts of the country, and I think we're very lucky in that regard.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking. I enjoyed it.
Today is December 12th, 2023. I am interviewing Andrea Statman with an addendum to her earlier interview. Hi, Andrea. Who were the people that most influenced you in your volunteer career?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier, when I did my interview, a few people that really had an influence on me. But then I started really thinking who really meant, the most to me and my involvement in the community and personally. And I would have to say that Ann Sikora, she was just the best. Ann was a person who always did the right thing for the right reason. And she opened so many doors for women in this community and really nationally. She was the first woman who ever served as president of the Federation in Dallas, and she was the first woman nationally who ever served as president of a major city federation in this country. So I learned from her so many things, and just working with her as I first became involved with the Federation and took on more and more responsibility. It was just such a wonderful experience to have her really by my side, pushing me in the right direction. And sometimes I would say, "Oh no, I don't want to do that," and she would say, "No, you have to do it because it'll be good for your personal development." She just was just the best, just with such a Jewish heart, but also with her mind on the Dallas community as a whole. She was always worried about the person who was underserved. She was very instrumental with Leonard Fine in starting that Maison, which was the Jewish response for hunger and was at the table at every place that that person needed to be to make a difference. And it was my pleasure to work with her and to become her, or for her to become my really dear, dear friend. And ultimately, we started a business together. So many wonderful memories of Ann.
Okay, thank you.